Returning to our top story, US President Donald Trump is encouraging Iranian protesters to keep demonstrating, saying help is on its way amid a brutal crackdown. Joining me live now for analysis is Sahar Razavi, the director of the Iranian and Middle Eastern Studies Center at California State University, Sacramento. Thanks so much for your time today. President Trump is now encouraging the Iranian people to overthrow the regime. How realistic a prospect is that?
I think it's not outside the realm of possibility, but at this point, what we would expect to see in the case of an imminent regime collapse, we haven't yet seen. That would require mass defections of military personnel. It would require a seizure of institutions of power by the public. We would have to see things that close to what we saw in 1978 and 1979, which thus far we haven't seen. The crackdown has been effective to a great extent. The last day or so has been a little quieter in the streets, or significantly quieter, depending on who you ask. And so at this point, the security forces appear to remain very loyal to the supreme leader and to the government.
And if we don't see that splintering away, as you point out there's a potential that this becomes even more deadly for the people demonstrating on the streets. If the Supreme Leader still has that stranglehold over the military, this potentially is an even bigger flashpoint on the streets.
It could be, but at this point, the internet blackout has been partially lifted, and we have a little more information trickling out, a little bit more success at getting a hold of people inside of Iran. And the government would not have opened even a little bit if it thought that it did not have a modicum of control over the trajectory of the protests. So I believe that regardless of how it bodes for the outcome of the uprising, it appears at this moment that, at least as far as the government is concerned, they believe they have a little bit more control today than they did yesterday.
And as we're able to get more word, as you say, out of Iran, are people afraid to talk about what's been happening on the ground? Is there a fear that if you speak out about what's been happening, that you could personally be punished or targeted by the regime?
There definitely is a fear. I myself know of several people who have been able to get a hold of loved ones in Iran, but those loved ones have been very reticent to speak openly about what exactly is happening. They've just conveyed that they are okay and people shouldn't worry, specifically about their family. But Iran has a very strong surveillance system within the country, and people have known that they are kind of under surveillance for quite a long time. For decades, even prior to the Islamic regime, Iranians have been under surveillance. So there is a long history of being wary of what to say openly for fear of the government response.
We've seen templates with previous other leaders of deciding at certain points to flee the country. I wonder your assessment on Ayatollah Khamenei. He's been in power since 1989. Is he a kind of person who'd be willing to voluntarily give up power, potentially flee to a country like Russia, or would that seem to be an option he'd be unlikely to take?
To me, it seems unlikely for several reasons. One is he is already in his late 80s and succession plans have been in place for a long time. So for the Islamic Republic, it would be probably the wrong signal to send if he were to outright flee, even if we thought that that was imminent, which I don't see the signs of as yet. I think more likely he would trigger succession plans to move forward, and he would announce his retirement from the position of supreme leader for any number of reasons that he could cite. I think it's unlikely that we would see a fleeing the way that we saw with Bashar al-Assad in Syria, who went to Moscow.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you finally about the role of Donald Trump here. For days, he's been publicly musing about his options, speaking about potentially military strikes. What would be the likely consequences if the US were to intervene?
I think there would be serious legitimacy challenges on the ground if the United States were to intervene. Iranians as a population are a very politically aware and politically sophisticated group, and they are well aware of the long history of foreign intervention in Iran, which has either thwarted or outright reversed its democratic gains in previous generations. So I think in general, though, there are some people who would welcome such an intervention because they think that it would be a relatively easy transition. I think by and large, Iranians know that if there were to be a perception that any kind of transitional leader were installed by the United States or by Israel, who have both openly encouraged protests and openly admitted involvement in this round, I think Iranians know that that would present some challenges for how legitimate that leader may appear to be in a post-Islamic Republic world. And that is the time that any leader would need to have the deepest mandate and the greatest legitimacy.
Sahar, Razavi, really appreciate your insights tonight. Thank you. Appreciate it.